Hello guys and welcome to Telex Academy. My name is Faisal and welcome to our journey of Three.js. So 3D.js is actually a powerful JavaScript library that allows us to actually create stunning 3D graphics for the web. As 3D graphics becomes increasingly important in modern web development, we say 3D.js provides an accessible way to actually add depth and interactivity to our projects. So let's dive into it. What's Three.js? I said it's a JavaScript library for 3D graphics that actually helps in simplify the creation of complex 3D scene and actually popular in web development for interactive graphics. So why should you learn 3D.js? I said you should learn 3D.js for you to be able to create stunning 3D visualizations. Then it helps enhance user experience on the web page, for growing demand for 3D content in web and mobile apps, and for foundation of the learning advanced graphics in programming. Now, in what applications do they actually use this 3.js? We say we use 3.js in game development. You create browser-based game with immersive 3D environments. You can use for data visualization, whereby you can actually transform complex data sets into interactive 3D charts and graphs. You can actually create virtual reality, like develop VR experience that can be accessed via the browser. You can actually create augmented reality, whereby we say we integrate 3D models into the real world using AR frameworks. Then for interactive marketing, you can build engaging 3D product showcase for e-commerce websites or e-commerce pages. Then we say for architectural visualization, we say we create realistic 3D models for buildings and interiors for architecture and real estate. So for also educational tools, we can develop interactive simulations and educational content using 3D.js. So let's begin the installation of our environment. The very first thing we need to do now is to install Node. We'll be using tools like Node.js. We'll be using a code editor. So I believe every one of us already have Visual Studio installed. If you don't, I'll show you how we can install it, and I hope we also have Node.js installed. And if you don't, I'll show you how we can install it. So the first thing to do now is to actually install Node.js and npm. Then we set up a basic project structure. Then install Three.js using npm. Then the recommended development tool we use VS Code and our browser developers too. So let's jump into it. So you can actually find this on your browser once you search for Visual Studio. Then upon opening the link, it shows you download. Then in the download section, you can just actually pick in what operating system you want to install it into. If you're using Windows, if you're using Linux, or you're using Mac, any one of it. So the same thing goes for the Node. So you can actually just install your Node into your computer. So let's see. So if you have all that installed now, the next thing for us to do now is this. So we say, if you open your terminal, say my terminal, then to confirm if Node is actually installed on your computer, you say node -v to actually check the Node version. So if it's giving you error, it means the Node is not properly installed. So if it's installed, you guys will actually have this. So let's continue. So to begin, the very first thing we need to do is to create a folder we want to actually work with. So I'll say, let's call it 3_js, right? So we go open in Visual Studio. Sorry. So when you're here, the first thing we need to do now is to actually initialize our project by installing by creating a package.json file. So I can just come to my terminal here and say this npm init of -y. But since my terminal is not working here, I'll be using an external one here. So I'll just say this terminal then inside my terminal I'll just have this. So I'll say cd of desktop Then I could say change directory to what, 3 underscore what, gs. Now I'm inside this folder. Now the first thing I need to do is what, npm init initialize what, y. Now this creates a what, a package.json file for me. Now the next thing for me to do now is to actually what, install the Three.js webpack and what, the webpack CLI. Now to do this, what do we say? We say, let's clear first. So we say npm install what, 3 webpack and what, webpack CLI, right? Then I say webpack hyphen dev hyphen what, server, then hyphen save hyphen what, dev, this way. So now this installs what, the Three.js for me. Basically it's just installing the what, the node modules for me. Now it brings in the Three.js, it brings in the webpack, and it also brings in what, the webpack CLI. Now that that's installed, the next thing for us to do is this. Now I create a folder where I'll be writing all my JavaScript code. So I say src, then I create another folder where I know I'll be having my output, mainly like my HTML. I call it dist, right? So the next thing we do is we actually create a file and call it webpack.config.js. now here I say const path is equal to require what. Now I say this path module dot export, then inside it I say what, my entry src what dot js. Now the next thing I say is what, output then inside I say my file name as bundle.js. Now for you to understand this clearly, I would like you guys to actually resolve back to our course on Babel and Webpack, so you actually like understand the full thing about Webpack I'm using here. So I can now say this, then I'm having this way. So I'm having modules, rules, then testers. Now my test here, instead of me using CSS, I'm more interested in CSS. What I'm interested in is JavaScript. So I say JS, then yeah, no, okay, yeah, exclude what, node underscore modules. So in this my use here, I'll say loader as what, Babel loader, right? Then options as this, right? So so I have my complete webpack config file here. So the next thing I have now is this. Under it I say the dev server now. So I say dev server, right? Then I say hyphen this, then inside I say contents base as what, path join this. Now what's wrong? Oh, sorry. Yeah. Now still inside this module. Now I'm saying this. Now I could say I'll not say yeah, compress as what true. Okay, this way. Then I say mode as what as development. This way. So our web config file is actually what up and what ready. Now to continue, now we move back into our slide to see what we have next. Now we say after the installation, now the next thing for us is what the basic concepts. Now under the basic concept, now we have what skin the scene, we have the camera, we also have the what the renderer. So we said the scene is what the container for what for 3D content, while the camera is what the viewpoint from which what the scene is actually what observed. Then we have the render, which is what the component that actually what renders the scene from the what from the camera's perspective. Now let's jump into the basics of what Three.js. Before we jump into the basics of the Three.js, I feel some of us don't still understand what we did here. So let me just go through a little breakdown of the code. So the first part we're having here, the const part, is actually like I'm actually importing the path module. Now this actually imports Node.js built-in path module, which provide utilities for working with files and directory paths. Then the next part where I have these modules.export. Now this is just the exporting configuration object. This syntax actually used to export the configuration object so that Webpack can use it when running the build process. Then inside it we have what the entry point. Now what's this entry point? Now we said the entry point specifies this actually specifies the entry point of your application, which is the file where Webpack starts building. In this case we are using what index.js located inside of what the src folder. Then we also have what our output configuration. Now in our output configuration we say we have in this section actually defines how and where to output what the bundled file. Now the file name now we have now specifies the file name of the output file in the case why in this our case we're actually using what bundle.js. Now the path we say this specifies the directory where the output file should be created. So once it creates the bundle file, where should it put it? Now I'm asking to put inside the what inside the dist folder. Now the next part we have is what is the module rules. Now in these rules now we say the rules is just an array that tell Webpack how to handle different file types. Now for the test we say this specifies a regular expression to match the file that this rule applies to. Now in our case we're saying what I want it to affect every .js file. Now the exclude, now this specifies which file should be excluded from what from processing. Then for the use we say we actually the use actually specifies the loader to use for transforming the match files, and in our case our loader is what Babel loader. So this in case that Babel will be used to transfer the JavaScript code to ensure compatibility with different browser. Now for the options, basically I'm just saying I want to allow you to configure the loader. Then I'm having in it as what preset, right? So in the preset just tells Babel to use the preset for compiling modern JavaScript based on the environment. Now the next thing we have is the development server here, whereby we're saying the dev server. So in this section now I'm saying it actually configures the Webpack development server in the sense that the content base specifies the directory from which this the server static from which to serve our static files. Then the compress if it's actually set to true, it actually enables zip compression for the served file. Then for the port now, I'm just specifying the port on which development server we actually run. In this case, it will be running on what our local host of what 9000. Now for the last one, the mode it just specifies the mode in which Webpack runs. Now this is how this guy actually works. But for you to actually have a better understanding of this, I want you to actually refer back to our Bibel and Webpack tutorial. Thank you. So now let's move on to the basics of Three.js. Now let's jump on into our basics. So inside our src folder now, we'll create an index.js file. Okay, I have this already. So let's run this. So the very first thing for us to do now is to actually what import our what Three.js. Yeah. So now to do this, I say import star Abby as 3 from tree, this way, right? So now this is just what importing Three.js. This line imports the entire Three.js library, the art as 3 now. The art as 3 syntax actually allows you to actually what access all the classes and functions in the what in Three.js library through the what the 3 namespace. So I made an error here. Yeah, 3, right? So let's move. Now the very first thing for us to do now is to actually what set up our scene, right? So the first thing to do here now is this. We say, let me make a comment here for us. So we say const scene is equal to what new 3 dot what dot scene, this way, right? So it is scene, right? So now at this point now, what am I doing? I'm actually was creating a scene. Now this line creates what a new Three.js scene, which serves as a what as a container for all the 3D objects, lights and what and camera. You can think of a scene as a virtual space where you actually what render your 3D graphics. You get me? Now after this, the next thing for me to actually do is what set up my camera. Now to set up my camera, I say this. Let's say create camera. Then I could say const camera, right, is equal to new 3 dot perspective camera. Does perspective camera, I don't want it to complete for me, dot perspective camera, right? Then I say this 75 comma windows window dot inner width, right? So slash window dot inner, what's next, height, then comma I say 0.1 comma, then I say slash what 1000, right, this way. So semicolon, then I say camera dot position dot z is equal to what 5, this way. So now basically what am I just saying here? I'm saying I'm creating a perspective camera which simulates how the human eye sees the parameters as follow. Now when I use the 75, I'm saying this is the field of view in degrees. A larger field of view, like let's say, let me put in terms of FOV, field of views, means that a wider view. Then when I say the windows dot inner width slash windows dot inner height, this aspect ratio actually ensures that the scene maintains its proportion based on the size of the browser window. Then when I said 0.1 there, I said this is the near clipping plane, which defines how close an object can actually be to the camera and still be rendered, right? So with this now it brings us to the part whereby we're having the positioning. So positioning camera, now we say camera does position dot z is equal to 5. Now I'm saying this actually moves the camera 5 units away from the origin along the z axis, allowing you to view objects that are added to the scene. Now the next part for us to do now is to set up our render. So I can now say this. I could say let's say create a render. Yeah, then I say const render is equal to new 3 dot WebGL render, right? So now I now say this render dot set size, then I say window dot inner width, comma window dot inner height, this way. So as this now, and I'll say this document dot body dot append child as renderer dot DOM elements, this way. So now what are we trying to achieve here now? Now we say the very first thing we're doing now was creating a render, right? Then it creates a WebGL render which is responsible for rendering the scene to the screen. Now this WebGL of the thing is a JavaScript API that actually allows rendering 2D and 3D graphics in the browser. Now the next thing we did there was to set up the size. We said renderer dot set size, right, of windows dot inner width, comma windows dot inner height, right? So now this actually sets size of the renderer to match the size of the browser window, making it responsive. Now appending the render to the DOM, we say document dot body dot append child of render dot DOM element. Now this actually adds the renderer output, right? A canvas, that is a canvas element to the HTML document body. This is what displays the 3D graphics in the browser. Now I'll be trying to create some geometric shape, and now the first one I'll be doing now is just a cube. Now let's see how this guy actually works out. So now we could say this. I would say create geometry, right? Now I now have this. I would say const geometry is equal to new 3 dot box geometry. Now instead of making it whole geometry, let's be specific about creating. Let's say cube, create cube, right? So now I can now say this const material now is equal to const material. I don't want you up here. Material, right, is equal to new 3 dot mash basic what material, right? 3 dot what mash basic material. Then I say this color, the color I'm giving now, and I'll say let's say 0x00 ff00, right? This way. So now I'm having this guy this way. Now the next thing I now say is this const cube, right, is equal to new 3 dot mesh, then we say geometry material, right? This way. Now the next thing says what scene dot what dot add what cube, right? Now what are we doing here? Now the first thing we're doing is what we're actually creating what a geometry, right? Create whereby we're saying new 3 dot what box geometry, yeah, right? So now I'm saying this actually what create a cube shaped geometry with default what with default dimension, that is 1 unit wide, 1 unit tall, and what 1 unit deep. Now to create this material, I'll say new 3 dot what mesh basic material, then color that. Then I'm saying this actually what is actually a basic material that actually gives like I'm actually creating a basic material that actually gives the cube a what a green color. Now the next thing I do now actually what create a mesh. Now where I'm saying const cube equal to new 3 dot mesh here, right? This actually combines the what the geometry and material into a mesh, which is the what actual object you can see in what in the scene. Then whereby I said scene dot add, now I'm just what adding the cube what to the scene. This like I'm actually adding the cube mesh to the what to the scene, so that it is actually what it will actually what be rendered. Now to render this scene now, and I'll say this. Now I say render let's say render scene, let's call it render scene space. Now I could have this function don't help function animates, right? Then we're having this. The first thing we're saying is what requests. Stop bringing suggestion. So I'm saying requests what request animation from what request frame, that is from animate here. So now I say this cube dot what rotation dot x plus equal to what 0.01, right? Then I say cube dot rotation dot y abi, then is equal to what plus equal to 0.01 also. So now at this point now let's say render what renderer dot render scene and what and camera. Now the last thing I'm now saying is this: I want you to actually what run the function of what animate. Now what are we doing here? Basically I'm creating an animation function, and sorry, I'm creating an animate function, right? Or say animation function anyone. So I'm saying the animate function now is defined to actually what undo rendering and what updating the scene. Now requesting animation frame, now whereby I said request animation frame, then inside I said what animate. This actually tells the browser to call the animate function before the next repaint, creating what a loop that updates and render the scene continuously. Now rotating the cube, now I said cube dot rotation dot x plus equal to what 0.1, right? So this actually what rotates the cube around the x-axis by what 0.01 radians each what by each frame. Now I said cube dot rotation dot y, it actually does the same thing, rotates the cube around the what y-axis also by 0.1 radius each frame. Now this actually gives like actually it actually gives a smooth no it actually gives the cube a smooth spinning effect, right? So now the rendering scene now, where I say renderer dot render, this actually draws the current state of the scene from the perspective of the camera into the canvas. Now, so basically the summary of everything we just did, like imagine, was step to step on how we actually achieve all this. Now we say what the very first thing was actually import the Three.js library here, right? Whereby we're saying like import as 3, right? Then I'm saying I created a scene. Then after creating a scene to actually hold my object, I just set up a perspective camera to view the scene. Then the next thing I did was create a web GL to render which actually renders to display this the scene in the browser. Now sorry, I said renderer to display the scene in the browser. Then we added a green cube to the scene, and for the last thing, the animate now, say we actually continuously update and render the scene to create animation. Now let's see the next thing to do. So the next thing to do now is to create a file. So let's name it index.html. Now upon getting here now, I will now say script src. Now we're not referencing back to this, right? I want to use this webpack. Now remember, what did we say here? We're saying everything, our output will be in the bundle.js, and inside our dist folder. So basically we're just coming back here to say this. Sorry. Now I could say bundle.js here. So after this, the next thing for us to do now is to reference back to our terminal and say this. So say npx webpack. I want to compile everything together. Currently we don't have the bundle.js file, but I want the bundle.js. Okay, because we didn't install Babel. So now let's install Babel. Now to actually install Babel, we say this. We say npm install. Let me clear first. Clear npm install, right? Babel -loader at Babel /presets save dev. So if you look into this, our bundle.js, as you can see, it already compiled everything together. But let's wait for the Babel. I should have confirmed. So like this, we actually have our Babel installed. So let's come back this npx webpack now. Now we are good. What's wrong? Okay. Here inputted as 3 was not found in 3. So what do we do here? Let's confirm our installation of Three.js again. So we could say npm install 3 save. Okay, so we have this now. Everything has been compiled and bundled together. So now, next thing for us to do now is to actually what, run this. Now, how do we run it? Now remember, we saw that part in this here, in this our in this our server here, whereby we said we want it to run on port 9000. So let's make it work on that port. So if we just say this, so we just say the same thing, mp. So now to do this now, I'll now say this. You say mpx web pack of what, of save. Now at this point now, this guy actually what, loads it for us. Now let's continue. Let's see what this guy got. Now it's letting me know that my project now is actually what, running on what, local host of what, 9000. Yeah. So now if I copy this and let's go to our browser and paste. Now as you can see what we have. We have our cube. Now it keeps on spinning around, showing us every part of it, because why, of the what, of the animation we are actually what, added to it. So this is how we actually what, run a simple, or we can say a basic Three.js project.